Good morning, everybody. You're all very welcome to this Friday forum. This is the second coming together. Last week we had a wonderful discussion here and Q&A, etc., and it was really enlightening. The force behind the forums and the theatre company that is the umbrella is called Fight2Flight, and I say Peter Gowen is the sort of the main man behind all this. And Peter's performing here at the moment in the Chronicles of Ogle, which is a wonderful show, and it finishes this Saturday. Is that right, Peter? Yeah. But so Peter's here as an actor, obviously, sort of performing, but also sort of he's put together these series of talks, and he's hoping to continue this process into the future. So this is very much kind of an inaugural event, testing the water, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. So last week, as I say, was really good. It was a great discussion, and last week I was on the panel, and I'm sort of from the older category of actor. I've been professional actor since I gave in my notice as a civil servant in 1984, and I haven't. I'm proud to say I haven't done a day's work since. But so that's when I came into the business, and it was a very different world then, obviously. And I worked. I did part-time jobs when I started. I did all sorts of stuff to make a living. I mean, I won't go into it, but it was a pretty interesting. It was a pretty interesting couple of years before I earned a crust. But when I started acting, when I got my first break, which was an extra, a walk-on in the Abbey, which they used to pay you £60 a week for, that was, I felt I'm on the way now, and then I can apply for my permit to look for work. I can get, then you got these licenses, which for each job, and which you had to get 5 licenses to get a probationary equity card, 10 licenses to get a full card. So it was a big deal. It was a long, hard road to get the card. Without the card, you didn't have a status as a professional actor, because it was kind of catch-22. You couldn't get work without a card, and you couldn't get a card without work. So that was kind of what we faced into, and that was pretty challenging. But again, look, I suppose the great thing about when you're sort of starting out is that you and you have that sense of purpose and belief. You just think, I'm going to do this regardless of what. I'm going to whatever comes up against me, whatever this sort of adversity comes my way. And again, because Dublin was a different city in the 80s, and I was saying last week that everybody could afford a place to live, but nobody had any work. You could live in Temple Bar here for what would be described as a peppercorn rent. I knew guys who were artists, musicians, some actors, but this whole area was like, you could get a room, you could get a bed, whatever, very cheap, and artists had studios that were dirt cheap as well. So the artistic community were able to live in this city very, very comfortably on very little, and how things have changed. So I won't really say much more about myself, except to say it's been a long road, and I'm just really proud to say and glad to say that I'm still an actor, and I love what I do, and I've no regrets, and I've come through periods of unemployment. Like, I was very fortunate that the first 10 years of my career, I was really not out of work at all, and I was double jobbing, treble jobbing, you name it. It's like I used to meet myself coming home, that kind of thing. But when I did have my first period of unemployment, I found it very challenging, really challenging. I remember I spent about 6 months, and I found that really tough. But we're resourceful people, so what I mean. I was used to living on nothing before I became an actor, so I was able to get by. But again, different climate, different times, different country. So enough about me. So we're here to discuss. That whole subject of what it's like, to be an actor, how people started and how they cope then with not officially being an actor when they're out of work, and when they're trying to make work and all that kind of stuff. So. I just want to thank, before I start, Lucy Ryan from Smock Alley, who is hosting the event, and Jane Daly, who is supporting the event. She's the head of the Irish Theatre Institute, and it's happening through Accelerate, and it's funded by Rethink Ireland. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panel. Fionnuala Gygax here, who's an actor. Jarlath Tivnan, Clare Monnelly, and Paddy Gowen, who's a mindfulness teacher. And Paddy's going to be talking to us after everybody else has spoken about, you know, what he brings to the conversation, so everybody will have a chance, you know, to sort of pitch in and sort of, you know, give feedback, etc. as well. So I'm just going to kick off, and I'll just say, you know, I'll just invite Fionnuala first to just sort of, you know, maybe talk to us. You know, it's the same subject that I was talking about there, but, you know, to expand a bit and, you know, give some sort of insight into her experience of being a professional actor. Thank you, Fionnuala.
Thanks a million. It's great to be in a theatre with people. It feels really weird, but it's really exciting. So I knew from a really young age I wanted to be an actor. And I suppose when you're in school, you don't really necessarily know how to go about that, but somehow through the grapevine, I heard about drama school, acting colleges in London, and I thought, oh, I'll do that, and thought that would be easy and I'll get into RADA. And that didn't happen, and that process was really hard. And I think that's sort of the first knock, where you have this belief because you don't really know what the world is like, and then you audition for drama schools when you're way too young, probably, certainly I was, and like flying over to London thinking I'm, you know, the bee's knees and not getting anywhere, and that's kind of the first hurdle. You've sort of run into it. But I ended up then going to Trinity, and I did drama and theatre studies there, and still absolutely want to be an actor. But when I was there, I suppose I got a much broader teaching and kind of writing, directing and making work, and realised when I was there that I enjoyed that side of things also, and there was something empowering about being able to create your own stuff. But still very much was like performance is number one, making is number two, and I didn't really necessarily see post-college that the two would become as sort of merged as they have for me, and that I think for all of us probably have just become really necessary, but also it's empowering too, that you have this other thing that you can kind of aid you with your acting. But so when I was finishing college then, I thought I'll go to drama school now, and I really wanted to go, and I actually did get into a drama school. And then, even though it was all I'd ever wanted, it was mad, and I got a part in a TV show that summer, and I still could have done both, but I just had this really overwhelming impulse that summer that I shouldn't go, and that I should try and go out and work, and I wanted to be a professional and not be a student anymore, I suppose, even though I would have loved the drama school. And so I kind of made that call, and that was a really tricky decision. And, you know, every now and again when I'm feeling my most insecure, I'm going, well, maybe if I went there I'd be off doing this, you know. It's kind of that thing that will always sort of be there, the what ifs, but ultimately I think it was the right choice. But so I did this TV show, which was definitely a false sense of this is what being an actor is, because it was like a dreamy 8-week shoot, and I thought, this will be my life now. I'll just go from this to that, and it'll be really easy. And it was not the case at all. When we finished the job, I thought I would walk into getting agents. That didn't happen straight away. It was like this really long, hard process. And when I finished that, I realised, it's the first time in my life that I'm not busy, I don't know how to fill my time, and had no experience of that, having gone to school. Like, you're so busy when you're a teenager and a kid with all these other things, and then in college you're so consumed by the thing you're doing. So those first few months out were like extremely, extremely difficult, and I just thought, God, I've made the worst decision of my life. But during that time, I suppose, started not focusing, but I'd written a play and kind of started applying for things. And I was always, all through college, I was sort of shadowing companies and stuff like that too. And I got that play produced in the Fringe the following year, and then that kind of started up a sort of a career, I suppose, as well as a maker. And I was in that show too, so that for me has been really important. And I know myself and Clare have spoken about this, who both actor, maker, writers, that for me, you know, up until now, like, it has been quite important to be in the work that I make. I'm not saying that'll always be the case, but that has been up till now something that has been important to me. So leaving, so I've been out of college 6 years. I set up a theatre company then 3 years out with people from college, which was great because then you sort of have a community, like a group to like bounce off. You have each other as a sort of a safety net, and loved making work with them, and did another fringe festival and did some other making stuff, and in that process got an agent over in London, which has been brilliant, and that gave me a sense of security for a little while. So what I've learned about this job is like you get these endorphin hits and you're like, oh, I'll never not feel insecure again because I've got the agent now, or I've got that job now, and it just doesn't last. It's really depressing when you find yourself back in that like just left college, think you're going to be whatever, and you're lying on your couch phase. So that's been tricky, and like still navigating that of being like, oh my God, I'm back here again, and not really feeling like, I think when I was in college and like looking at places like the Abbey and the Gate, you kind of just had this feeling that you'd be in ensembles there and learning from the older actors and working your way up and gradually, you know. And I think because the industry, the infrastructure, like obviously with funding and stuff, actually there isn't a huge amount of work going on at any one time because we only have a certain amount of theatres, and you know, so that kind of what you're talking about, being part of like the ensembles and the walk-ins, and like that to me is like a dream. I'd happily be a walk-on in the Abbey for a year, holding a spear, but that kind of that's not really a thing that happens, and so it really is job to job to job. But the making, I suppose, on the side has been excellent. I suppose there's been, again, you want to maintain this balance of, well, I am still an actor and I make as well, and making sure that like you're being true to yourself and you're not just writing because you're panicking about not working, and you know, you really want to make a thing, and which I have. The pieces that I've made, I'm proud of. But I suppose then so like mix. I have done stuff like in some telly and screen and stage stuff. But I suppose when the lockdown happened, like that was a huge reflective time. And I had these reflections before of like, wow, like do I feel supported as an individual in an industry? And in lots of ways, like I've been extremely, extremely lucky I've done nearly every mentorship you can do. Like I've been so cradled in that way by brilliant people like ITI, and I did the Pan mentorship and loads of stuff that I have really been nourishing. But then actually at the end of the day in the lockdown, certainly as an actor, you're like, well, there's no one, you know, you're just there and you're not working or whatever. So I think I got a better perspective on the job during that time. Right before that, I kind of had, I suppose, been out a little while and thinking as well, okay, I'm not really one for forward planning and future planning. I'm a bit all over the place, but I was like, okay, because obviously this job isn't for the money at all, but was sort of like, okay, so it's actually quite a hard job. I absolutely adore it, but it's very difficult, and also I'm, you know, in the future, will this be enough money? So I started thinking about trying to do some screenwriting and try to do that too. And actually that's something now that I have one project now that's thankfully been accepted, that I'll be writing a film, which is really exciting. And that sort of came from trying to create that sustainability, because, you know, like I'm never going to do anything else. Like I couldn't do anything else. So I suppose it's just been a journey of trying to like put all these things in place that will make it bearable and not make you bitter or hate it, and protect the love you have for it. So that was sort of something that came about sort of in the lockdown. And also, I think when the lockdown happened, it was really interesting just observing people's reactions. And certainly a lot of my actor friends were relieved because finally they could step off the treadmill that is like trying to get somewhere and be seen and do auditions. And finally there was just a bit of, I can't do that now. No one can do it. So no one's in a room that you're not in, and there was a real sense of relief. And I suppose that was worth noting, worth observing that, and like listening to that and being like, okay, well, like relief, like is that a good thing to be feeling? But over the lockdown, then you find other things. So, you know, I was still watching loads of shows online and doing lots of stuff, but I did start to think, actually, I'd love to just have something else there on the side, that when I'm having these bad times with acting, which do come, like you can have the best time. And like the start of the year, I had the worst 4 months ever of the career, just nothing happening, like really just sort of numb with it and going, I don't care, like I've no interest in auditioning, I just feel now I'm not an actor. And then the last 3 months have been amazing, and I'm like, acting's the best thing in the world. So it's that like manic extremity that you're like, okay, well, how do I navigate that? Because I don't want that to be my life of like, it's the worst thing in the world, it's the best thing in the world. So I did a course this year that I just qualified in yesterday to be a personal trainer on the side. And that's given my soul a little bit of bam. It's just that I have that there, not to do another job, but like if there's a few months I'm not doing as well as or as busy as I would like to be with acting, I have this other thing that I love that I can engage with, I suppose. So yeah, that's been my journey.
Thanks, Fionnuala. That is amazing. I have to say, I just found that so, you know, so fascinating, but also sort of uplifting in as much that, you know, you're sort of listening to sort of Fionnuala talking about, you know, her hopes and her, you know, what she was trying to achieve when she set out, and the decisions that she made consequent to that, and all the I suppose the junctions that she's reached so far, but how she's kind of, I suppose, found her way and sort of in a very difficult environment, but like the positivity, I just love the positivity, because I think that's what really sustains us, you know, that we can sort of, you know, that we don't give up, that we have that sense that like, okay, I'm still here, I still want to do this. How do I get to the next level? You know, how do I so support myself? And like when Fionnuala was talking about theatre making, I just thought, wow, that's fantastic. And like screenwriting and, you know, becoming a personal trainer, I just thought, wow, just it's incredible commitment to doing, you know, what we all do. But also like that, you know, one of the things, and I suppose I did find it when I started, and again, it's easy to forget it, but sometimes now on Facebook particularly, I can contact with a lot of people who I maybe wouldn't have seen for years, you know, the people who moved out of Dublin or whatever, who are still doing what they started out doing. Like there's a friend of mine down in Ennis, Eleanor Feely, you know, Eleanor Peter, I think. And she left Dublin, she couldn't get any more work. She reached a point where the whole commercial thing was sort of, you know, failing for her. And she went back to Ennis, where I think one of her parents is from, and she got into community, working in the community, working with elderly people, and she, you know, started going into Clare theatre and built up a relationship with them. And she's been doing that ever since. I went down to her one point for she was there about 3 or 4 years, and I came away that weekend and I was so invigorated. And I was just, oh my God, you know, not alone did she not give up, she found a whole new level of sort of creativity and to do what and I thought to myself, you know, why would she go back? You know, because she's been supported here by a community. And she's been, like, she brought me to an old folks home where she was working, and she was introducing me to all these people that she'd been charting their stories and everything like that. Then she brought me into a place where they were getting a sculpture made for the garden. And I remember before I got on the bus, she introduced me to somebody who was special needs, and we had a conversation, and she was doing some class with this girl. And I just thought, wow. And I said to myself, yeah, you know, but that's so she's found her way. It's like Fionnuala talking about where she's at. I think, you know, we said last week, it's one of the things that I think is really important as well, that when you start off, that something clicks. You know, whether it's like you were talking about mentorship with companies like Pan and support from the Irish Theatre Institute. And then prior to that, obviously getting the break, getting the 8-part series, and then boom, even though it kind of ground to a halt, you have an experience of what it can be like. And again, it's like having something to sustain you, and the sense that there's that's there. Okay, that's not going to continue for now, but I'll get there'll be other chances down the line. So it's a question again of sort of believing in what you're about. And I think, the older I get, the more I think I'm an artist. I'm not just an actor. I'm an artist, and my whole life is connects with what I do as an artist. So it's not just when I'm acting, when I'm on a stage or in front of a camera. And that's really helped me. And listening to Fionnuala really reminded me that, again, there are opportunities everywhere. I was just thinking when I go home this evening, I might drop into the new theatre because I wanted to have a conversation with somebody there. But I can go for a long time, where like Fionnuala was saying again, where you kind of go, oh shit, God, yeah, what am I doing? I'm fooling myself, I used to, I was doing great a few years ago, and now it's kind of all gone quiet. But I think the point is that everybody goes through that. So that when we come together and we talk about it, we realise, we're not alone. And I think, again, that sense of community, in the sense of knowing that we are part of that there's it's a we, it's not I, it's a we. And that's what sustains us, So thank you, Fionnuala. It was absolutely fantastic listening to you. We're going to just move on to our next speaker, who is Jarlath Tivnan. So Jarlath, same format.
Same
just,
gig.
Take the floor and sort of express yourself there, whatever you feel like saying, in the context of what we're talking about.
Okay, yeah, within the context.
Or whatever. Look, if you want to do an
everything.
audition piece or a monologue, go for it, man.
Thanks very much for having me, and thank you, Peter, for including me. My name is Jarlath. Right now, currently, I'm in rehearsal with Decadent Theatre Company for their production of There Are Little Kingdoms by Kevin Barry. That's going to be going on in the Galway Arts Festival in a couple of weeks. But that's currently, I'll tell you how I got into this whole world and what I've learned along the way. So I kind of had a stereotypical introduction into the world of acting. I did the school musicals when I was in secondary school. Calamity Jane was the first musical I did. I didn't have a part, I was a bellboy, and I had 2 lines and I had a massive suitcase. But the town loved me because I was really small and the suitcase was massive. And I had one scene where I came on and said my 2 lines, and I got a big clap, and then I walked off again, really happy with myself. And there was a review in the Roscommon Herald. I'm from Roscommon. And 3/4 of the review was about this tiny little guy who came on with the suitcase. It's still the best review I've ever gotten. And so I was kind of there. That's where the bug kind of bit straight away. Did Grease the year after that, and then Me and My Girl in the town of Boyle. And then I went to NUI Galway to study arts. I had no interest in anything really. Maybe subconsciously I was like, maybe I'll just do a few plays in Galway, but it wasn't even an active thought I had in my head before I went there. And but I went to the Sox Day within the first week of NUI Galway, and I was just naturally drawn to the drama table, Dram Sock, that was there. Because right before I went to that table, I actually went into one of the toilets in one of the student buildings, and on the toilet dispensary, it said, "Pull here for an arts degree." I was like, oh man, that's a great start. So intelligently I went to the drama table, and they were auditioning for Juno and the Paycock, and I played Joxer Daly as an 18-year-old, but that's what Dram Sock's all about. I learned a lot. I was in Galway for 4 years. I did 19 plays in NUI Galway because I never left the Bank of Ireland Theatre, and I was failing exams left, right and centre. Every Christmas, every summer, repeats. I'd be sent to my uncle's house in Salt Hill so I would get the essays done every year. But I learned a lot in Dram Sock because I made loads of mistakes, and you weren't just an actor, you were help hanging lights. I was putting up posters in places I shouldn't be putting up posters all around the city. But there was a great sense of, let's get this show on the road and let's all just cobble together and make it. And I've made some lifelong friends from the Dram Society. And then in my 4th year, repeats again in the summer. And just finish these few essays and I'll have an arts degree. And then I saw that there was an advertisement for the Galway Community Theatre that Andrew Flynn, who is directing me in this show now, There Are Little Kingdoms, he also runs the Galway Community Theatre. And there was an advertisement for Frank Pigg Says Hello, the Galway Community Theatre production for the Galway Arts Festival in 2012. And that's the stage adaptation of The Butcher Boy. So I just looked at the post like, don't do it. don't go for an audition. And I did. Knowing full well I had 8 essays to do. And I got cast as Francie Brady. And I remember the first 2 weeks, and it's a really intense part. Anyone who knows the story, it's crazy. And I was giving it my all, and by the time I came home at the evening and I started having anxiety, and I have to do the essays, and I'm up at 8 the next morning, and when will I get to eat? And I started trying to do a timetable of when I can eat and do rehearsals and do the essays. And about 2 weeks into the rehearsals, I had this kind of attack, and I said, it's either one or the other. I have to do either the essays or do this play and give it my all. And I got the bus home to Boyle in Roscommon, practicing the conversation that I would tell my parents. You know, all that money you pumped into me and paying for rent and all of that. I'm not doing the final essays. I don't have the time. It was the scariest bus journey home. And it was the worst audition I've ever done. Talk about preparing for something and having your lines. And my mother kind of knew first. She had an inclination, and my dad was sitting watching the 9 o'clock news, which is he going to go into him? I said, okay, it's time. So I went in and I sat down. I sat them both down. I said, listen, I got cast in this show, and it's a dream part for me, and I love it so intensely, and I do not have the time. It's either one or the other, and if I don't do this role, I'll never forgive myself. And I wasn't getting paid. It was nothing to do with anything. It was just the role that I was given, and just the vibe in the rehearsal room, and Andrew, the first professional theatre man that I ever worked under, and he was so good. And I started crying because my brain just got scrambled, and then I spewed it all out. There was a pause, and my dad just looked at me and said, okay. And that was it. I couldn't believe it. I was ready for the wrath of Khan, and it didn't happen. And I said, okay. I was like, yeah. So I can go back to Galway, yeah. And it was, and then from then on, the best compliment I've ever received was from my mother when she went to see Frank Pigg Says Hello. And it was a great show, and it went down really well, and I was really happy with the performance I gave because I had all the energy and body and soul put into it. I had the time, and my mother said, I forgot you were my son up there. And so yeah, and I remember halfway through the run, I went for a pint in the Galway Arms with the rest of the cast, and I went down to the toilet downstairs, and Andrew sidled up beside me, and he started peeing, not in the same urinal, in the urinal next to me. And he said, well, Jarlath, what are you doing this December? Nothing. And he said, would you like to do a Skull and Connemara with Decadent Theatre Company? And this is like a level up. I had do in my head when he said that to me. I went, yeah. And the pleasure I had ringing my mum and dad to say, I'm getting paid to do a job because I did this one for free, but gave it my all. Now I have this one. And it was just, I was more happy for them to hear that than for me, and that was in 2013. I went into a production with John Olhan and Breedney Nocton and Patrick Ryan, 3 great theatre actors, and I learned so much from them, from just the art of doing it with them. no reading of books or anything like that, and that was incredible. And ever since those few years, you know, I've done many shows with Decadent Theatre Company, and you know, if you form a good relationship with some people and they keep giving you work, like, it's a very privileged position to be in. But of course there are gaps in between those shows. And I also work a lot with Smock Alley Theatre Company. They're a Galway-based theatre company. They wouldn't get the same funding as Decadent would, so often breaking into them, I would have done a lot of work for, if not for free, then for, you know, pretty low wages, or seeing what we have by the end of our tour. And psychologically that can be hard, you know, to not have value, like monetary value on your work. It's not easy sometimes, and it's one of those rare, it's why you call it a vocation or bitten by a bug or whatever. It's a fever that you just can't shake, and so you put up with a lot of crap to do it and to get yourself out there. That word exposure, it sends shivers up my spine. I remember there's a great cartoon of a young actor getting a theatre job, and he says, and how much will I get paid? And the theatre person says, oh, well, you won't be getting paid in this one, but it'll be great exposure. To which he replies, oh great, because my rent is 500 exposures this month. You know? So psychologically that isn't easy sometimes, but you put up with it because you want to be an actor. There's no other job in the world. Like, you won't say to a plumber, thanks for fixing my sink, I'm going to tell everybody about you now, and bye. You know, like, they're going to get paid for doing a job. So I empathise with anyone who goes through that. It's not easy. But like Fionnuala was saying there, I got into creating as well. And I don't know why I didn't like the idea at the start. I would rebel against saying, oh, I try and create shows, I try and write shows as well. I have no idea why that was in my head. I used to say actor first, actor second, writer third, that sort of thing. And maybe it's an Irish thing. I have no idea. The rebel against that, but I've gotten more and more into it, and more proud of it as the years have gone on. So the first play I wrote was between jobs. Smock Alley Theatre Company approached me and says, we've got a little pot of funding. I had written a small character in a play we had all done together, and that character, you know, it was really well received by the audience. And Maria, the artistic director, said, would you expand on that character and maybe put more characters around him and see what you come out with? And I went, okay. And I wrote a play called Pleasure Ground, and it was performed here in Smock Alley, and again it went down well. And I remember when I was writing that, sometimes you just talk about double jobbing and triple jobbing. I got cast in The Pillow Man, again with Decadent, but I had a very small role in it, back to my cameo days in Roscommon. So like there was like 40 minutes where I had to be set behind the stage because the walls would open and I'd have my little scene and then the walls would close again. But I had to be in position, because if I wasn't in position I'd be making too much noise. So I was always sat there for 40 minutes every night of like a 15-week tour. But I wrote the play behind that set. I had my little notepad, and then when I could hear the cue, I just put on the notepad and take up my position. So you just filling in little pockets of time and feeling you're making progress psychologically is very helpful. And I've gone on to write 2 plays. I've adapted a novel, a Donal Ryan novel, The Thing About December, 2 years ago, which was another wonderful experience. And I am currently writing my 3rd play, Cross Street, which will be going on in Roscommon this year in November. And in that play, there is a character which I didn't have to do any research for. The play is about living in a city with people you have no communication with, like as housemates. It can be very strange to live with people yet you don't know anything about them. But one of the characters is an actor in a city, not specified, but it's an acting city. And I'm trying to explain, one of his lines is saying, once I pay for rent and pay the bills, I have nothing left, once for the privilege of existing under a roof in this city. So the challenge of staying in a city that's active and full of arts is not easy because it's very expensive. That is very, very hard. And one of the other characters kind of say, would you not go home for a while, and sure, can't you write at home and take a train up to auditions? And his attitude is, if I go home, the inner fires will die. And he's like, technically I can, but I need to be here in order to keep those fires burning. And I'm not saying the character is right or wrong, but I have felt that. And so that's another challenging aspect, is surviving in the hub of arts, and to be the privilege of being surrounded by constant inspiration is costly. Mm-hmm. It's very costly. And then the lockdown happened, of course, but I actually learned a lot from that. I learned the importance of routine when I wasn't working. Mentally, a routine was very good, and I had my set hours every morning. I'd wake up, I'd write for 2 hours, I'd break, I'd write for 2 hours, I'd break. And that really kept me intact. And exercise actually did help me as well. I'd form a routine of exercise. It had a good psychological effect that I'd be kind of fit and stage ready as well when it comes around. I just felt that was very good for my mind, but very good for my body. And then through modern technology, I was reading scripts, not just play scripts, but film scripts, and just watching how different people wrote and reading them out loud and learning off pieces that, you never know, I might get an audition and this piece will be really handy to know. So just little things that I was kind of arming myself with. And I read a lot and all that sort of thing. And it's slowly becoming more and more apparent, David mentioned it there, that we are all in this boat together, and you can forget that sometimes, that these experiences are not your own. Like every artist, when you mention, I thought this and I thought that and I was down and I was up, you're talking about ping pong and of the mindset, I'm on top of the world, I feel like I'm in a sewer, that can happen within a day. But there's great comfort in knowing that there's so many artists out there, and they'll all nod their heads in agreement because they know and they understand that the fever will never leave you, and you will put up with a lot of crap and a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but it's worth it when it's working. And that's me. That'll do.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Jarlath. It was amazing just to hear again your journey, and I was really struck by by your journey home to sort of face the music with your dad. I was very kind of I was brought back to my own childhood, or my own sort of youth, because I had that, and I think it's in many ways like I think that's a kind of a rite of passage, isn't it, for most people, even no matter what they do, but particularly when you choose something that you really feel passionate about, and it's at that point in your life when you say, you're almost there, I want to do this, but you're just hoping that that you'll get the familial support. I was in London when I sort of took the leap, and I remember writing a letter back and sitting up late at night thinking, I'm going to write this letter just to sort of say this is what I'm doing and get thrown in the job, whatever like that, And then coming home at Christmas, I remember my sister and my mother met me at the airport, and my sister's a few years younger than me, and she said, I don't even know if I asked, but she says, Dad's okay. I said, really? Because I was kind of expecting to walk in, for Christmas, and it's like, here he is, he's no job, he's after throwing in everything, whatever. So that was good as well. And it's like that thing of like, I'm going to do it anyway. But it's great to have that support. I mean, that's really, really important, And I think a lot of people, I mean, certainly, again, I can only speak for my generation, which is, is a long way back. There were no drama schools. There was nothing like that, certainly in Ireland. So you kind of were facing into a sort of a very unknown road, and whatever. And you knew that your parents. So my father would have, come from a generation where, literally they had nothing. I mean, and if you didn't have a proper job, you were finished. You know what I mean? You literally end up on the streets with nothing, with no money, or no food, whatever. So there's that parental worry and that fear, whatever. But again, I think, it's like whatever you choose to do in life, and having that sense of vocation and that sense of like passion for what you want to do, is really important. Like I have a friend he's nearly 70, and he doesn't look 70. He's an artist, a professional artist, and like hail, rain or shine, he will go to the studio every day. Like every day, he goes to the studio. So if I ever want to meet him, I ever want to know where he is, like he'll either have gone out for a coffee or something, but most of the time he'll be in the studio. So it's like keep on, keep showing up, and keep, but like that support is so important. Like again, what Jarlath was saying, I was very moved again by, sort of making that decision. Your father not resisting and encouraging you and sort of saying, okay, yeah, giving the nod of the head, and then having somebody like Andrew Flynn who was there, kind of giving him that first break, and then giving him more work. I was very fortunate as well. I had someone, in the Abbey who gave me my first break, Tomas McGanna. Like I was a pain in the arse. I didn't stop ringing him. I didn't stop. It was like, it was like the Mormons. I just stuck my foot in the door. It's like, hi, I'm here. But he was a man who gave a lot of opportunities to young actors as well. He loved young actors, and you could see it in him. When he was around young actors, he was buzzed, and he loved giving actors a break. And so I remember when I was finished that extra job, and I remember going in on the table at the stage door was a script with my name on it, and a note saying, I'd like you to audition for this part, and just that sense of like, oh God, this man has my back, he believes in me, you know what I mean? And again, that sort of that sense of somebody was there giving you the thumbs up, and who obviously there were no guarantees, but that's all we need. We just need that encouragement. We need that sense that we're sort of we're being given support to continue what we've chosen to do with our lives, because it is a big leap into the dark. So our next speaker is Clare Monnelly. Would you please welcome Clare? Thank you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Clare Monnelly, and I'm an actor and a writer. That sounds like I'm saying I'm an alcoholic, doesn't it? It's not a million miles away. I started acting as a kid. I was an activities kid, and I did everything under the sun. But as soon as I started doing drama, everything else fell away, and it was all I ever wanted to do. And when anyone would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say an actor, not knowing what that meant in any capacity at all. I was 17 leaving school, and I wanted to go to drama school, and my folks were like, funny, get a degree. So I went and got a degree, and like that joined the Drama Society, and just spent my whole time there doing plays. And if I wasn't there, I was in the pub drinking. I had a really good college experience, and I grew up a lot. I have an arts degree. It's there. But then I went and got a job in the bank, and I still had this thing niggling away in the back of my brain that I knew I wanted to be an actor, but at that point I felt like I'd bailed on it, and I was a bit ashamed that I'd bailed on it, so I didn't really talk about it too much. But then I decided that it was now or never. I had to bite the bullet and give it a go, and I suppose my attitude to going to drama school was that I'll do it and I'll give it the lash, and if it fails miserably, then at least I've tried. So I went to drama school here in the Gaelic School of Acting. I graduated in 2011. And I remember on my first day, like I was the most excited person I've ever on my first day of drama school. I remember being so focused and being like, I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to learn my craft. Like I was intense. I was probably a bit of a pain, but it was so it was exactly what I needed. I know that sometimes people want to be actors and they wonder about the right path to choose, and I think it's really hard to tell somebody what to do because the right path will be different for everybody. Drama school was the right path for me because I knew I had this thing that I was good at, but I didn't know what to do with it or how to control it or how to get it out into the world, and they are the skills that drama school gave me. And it also gave me a platform for leaving and going out and starting to work. which did happen. I was very lucky. I graduated from the Gaiety and I got a fantastic agent, and I did get a job not that long after I graduated, but after that first job, I fell off that first of many cliffs, and the last night of the show, I was absolutely devastated because I was like, well, that was a fluke. Like, that was a fluke. Somebody gave me a job by accident. Everyone will figure out now that I'm shit and no one will ever employ me again. And that was kind of the journey for the first 2 or so years, that I'd get a job and I'd be over the moon and I'd be up to 90 and I'd do the job and I'd be in my element. Couldn't believe I was getting paid to do this thing that I loved so much. And then at the end of the show, I would on the Monday morning after the show wrapped, I'd be devastated and just in the pits of despair and not knowing what to do with myself. And as a bit of a control freak, I really couldn't abide the fact that my entire career trajectory lay solely in the hands of other people. I couldn't get my head around that at all. So I decided that I wouldn't let that be the case, and I started to write. Not with any real plan in mind either, just I suppose when you're in drama school you spend like 50 hours a week putting your heart and soul and blood and sweat and tears into this craft that you're building, and you do that for 2 solid years or 3 even for some people, and then you come out and it's like, I'm here! What now? And you have all this creative energy that has nowhere to go. So when I started to write first, I don't think I had any plan in place or any real idea of what it would do, but what it did was it focused my mind. It gave me somewhere to put all that creative energy. It made me feel like I wasn't sitting around waiting for the phone to ring or leaving my power in the hands of other people. So I started doing that, and I was very lucky to get the support early on from Dublin Fringe Festival and from Access Ballymun, who produced my first play, which was called Charlie's Klepto. It's a one-woman show. And I think when I did a week of development in Access with my husband, who's also my dramaturg and director, which works really well. We're still married, so that's fine. We did a week's development and we did a reading at the end of the week, and Niamh Ní Chruthóir, who works in Access, told me she wanted to commission me to finish writing it, which was completely beyond my wildest expectations. It was just this thing that I had to do to feel like I had control over something. So that was the best case scenario. And I spent that money on our wedding. So I had to finish writing it. And then they put dates in the diary, so I had to actually do it. So I think, as well as you have to have so much self-motivation to do this job. It's outrageous. You have to be the one that gets yourself out of bed every day. You have to be the one to apply for the funding or get that tape in, or all the things you have to do that nobody is telling you have to achieve. But I've also been very lucky to have people around me who back me up and tell me that I'm able, that I'm capable. And I think the community that you build around yourself is so, so important. People like Irish Theatre Institute, or getting in touch with your local venue, is so... People like Lucy here in Smock, and Niamh and Mark and Access Mark, who's now in the Abbey. These are the people who have dedicated their careers to supporting and backing artists, and they understand how hard it is, how lonely it can be. And you need those people in your corner. You need that support network to keep going and to keep pushing. And so Charlie went down really, really well. And I'm actually virtually in Edinburgh right now with that show. And so it's gone and gone. And it was a real turning point for me. I was, all of this to say as well, that for the first, at least, I graduated 10 years ago. For the first 5 years of my career, I was temping all the time as well. I was not acting solidly by any stretch of the imagination. I would get a gig, I'd leave a temp job, I'd go back to the temp job, I'd get a gig. That was my life for a good solid 5 years, until I started to be more proactive about how I could support myself as an artist in terms of accessing funding from the Arts Council, from venues, building relationships with other creatives, making things happen, not just sitting there and waiting for the phone to ring. And it's not that does work for some people. I'm not naive. I know that people, have careers like that, and that's great. But it just wasn't happening for me at the rate that I wanted it to happen for me. So I had to do something about it, and I did, and I continued to do that. And like Fionnuala said, it just opened so many doors in terms of what you can achieve. I think, first of all, a busy actor is a better actor, whether you're busy doing acting or busy doing anything. I've often had to run away from an audition to go back to a temp job, and that just makes you all the more attractive to a director if you're legging it back to your temp job up the road. But I think those things really do matter, even if only for your mental health, keeping your mental health in check. That every Monday morning I have, for a long time it was temping between jobs, and now on a Monday morning I have my desk to go to because I have writing I have deadlines, or I have an application to finish, and it's a lot of juggling, like, because then the acting work does come in, or the voice work, all these different ways that you can diversify as an actor. I think they're all so important, and like that, like none of us are in this for the money. That would be ludicrous, but it does matter at the same time, and being in a position to require a certain level of remuneration for your work is really important. And I know that everybody will all have worked for free, but there did come a point where I, in my brain, made a conscious decision that I wouldn't do that anymore. That's not to say that I haven't. I have on the special occasions, but I think it came down to a level of self-worth that I needed to impose upon myself and my work, that I wouldn't do it for free anymore. Not to say that we're well paid, but it's just the principle of the thing, I suppose. So I've continued to write, also branching out into screenwriting now because I'd like to make more money. But all of that makes you, I think, a better actor. I've been asked into way more development rooms because of the work that I do myself, because not only am I an actor, but I also have a voice as a writer in a room, and that's really helpful. It's really beneficial in a rehearsal room to have all this. It just boosts your confidence as an artist, and that is the word that David used, and he's so right, that we're all artists in our own right. And I did struggle with the label of writer as well for a long time. I found it difficult to call myself that because I felt like an imposter. I gotten to a point where I'd done enough jobs where I could call myself an actor, but it took a long time to call myself a writer. But I do proudly wear both those hats now, and I'm definitely, I can see why people make the choice to move on from this career. I remember leaving drama school and thinking, I'd never stop being an actor. This is glorious. Why would you ever not want to do it? And then about 2 years in, I went, no, I totally get it. Like, I totally get it why you go. If it started bringing you more stress than joy, I can completely understand why somebody would walk away from it. But I'm glad to say that, God, that's a really depressing note to end on. I'm glad to say that I'm not there yet. And I don't foresee myself being there either. I think that's me.
Thanks so much, Claire. That was amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. Just when you finished there, you said, like, I don't foresee that. That an understanding that some people, do decide to move on. They have to get on with their lives, and they park acting, or they say goodbye to acting. I have a friend who is, he spent a long time in the States, and he was working over there as an actor, but he was really, really, he was dying to come home, and wasn't really getting much work in the States, but he was passionate, and he was still, he was younger than me, but he was still very young then, and he came back here, and I met him, and he said, he had CVs, he had photographs, he did all this stuff, and he was going around and and I'm going to such and such a casting directing, and I said, do you mind me saying something to you? And he said, what? I said, look, Dublin is not LA, it's not New York, it's a small town, there aren't many people. I said, have you made a follow-up call? And he said, yeah. I said, I think just leave it at that for the moment. See, because you'll only kind of alienate people. You start hustling too much. And even though I know that's the way in America, but you've got books of casting directors, you've got books of, You know, there's loads. You could be writing all day and all week and all year, and you know that's a huge. It's a huge country, whatever. Anyway, he basically had all this energy. It wasn't happening for him. He gave it up. He went into recruitment. He's an incredibly successful recruitment business. Has done for a number of years, you know. And he brought the same sensibility and the same energy and the same enthusiasm and the same passion into recruitment. And I see him occasionally, you know, and I can still see that light in his eyes. But I also know he's still acting, because a few years ago he said he was doing an amateur production of The Dead, and he was playing Gabriel, and he was really excited. And I was going, yeah, still there, and he's employing people, and he loves what he does, and he's given passing on the same passion to other people, you know, that acting gave him. So it's, you know, it's just transformed into something else. It's not gone, you know. I think there's something beautiful about that. Anyway, so thank you, Clare. But just two other words you used, or two other phrases you refer to, which will, I think, segue very neatly to our final speaker, Paddy Gowen. You just mentioned mental health and self-worth, and those two things are big for me, you know. Because you know, they're sort of like, it's really important, and it's funny because it wasn't something when I was growing up was discussed very much, you know. And you know, it's funny. My father would have been, and I'm not going to bang on too long because we only have a half an hour left, but just say my father was a very anxious man, and you know, he was. I remember he used to sort of he just couldn't contain himself, you know. He was always anxious. And you know, he was an incredibly busy man. He was involved in all sorts of things in the community, like the credit union, and he'd been a trade unionist and everything. But I could see from him that whatever his upbringing was, and whatever, you know, God knows what kind of a childhood he had, because I don't know. He never spoke about it. That was his generation. But the anxiety was palpable. So, you know, you felt a lot of the time in the house you were walking on eggshells. You know, it was kind of like, and he wasn't a violent man or anything like that. But you know what I mean? He suffered a lot with anxiety. And I think actors do, you know, I think that's our stock in trade. Anxiety is just something that we live with, you know. And then you know, and it's funny. I remember going to London to an audition, and I said to a friend of mine, you know, I'm kind of really, you know, I'm not looking forward to this, and I'm stressed, and I'm blah blah blah. And he said, look, just go. He says, you know, you don't know what that's about. That could lead to something else. You might go to the audition in London, and there could be someone at the audition, or whatever. It might be nothing to do with that. But he said, do you know what I read from you as well? He says, excitement. He said, maybe some of it is excitement, and how much of it is stress. So again, like, and Paddy's the expert here, so I'm not going to tread on his toes. But like that whole notion of, you know, how to be present, how to sort of to be in touch with where you're at, and what how to process your. That energy, that stress, that whatever, you know, that sort of that sense of anticipation and sense of you know, the sort of you know, the sort of the worry, you know, all that kind of stuff, because you can do that, you know, and all these kind of these wonderful techniques that exist, you know, are great tools for actors, you know. So, Paddy Gowen.
Thank you very much. Let me just introduce myself first. So I've been a dentist for 35 years, which is one of the high stress jobs with, you know, high rate of suicide and stuff like that. And you're there wielding a dangerous implement, high speed inside somebody's mouth, a moving target. So can be intensely stressful. Very structured time. You're always late, or you're always trying to push. Your day is mapped out. So there's a huge amount of structure. Unlike what I'm hearing here, which is creative, loose, not knowing, lots of knowing. Very structured. So, and I think when you're starting in any career, you sort of swim towards whatever is going to offset the stress that's happening without possibly even knowing what you're doing. So I was drawn to, myself and my brothers got mad into windsurfing, hopping on a board and screaming across the bay, and I just loved the sea, anything to do with the sea. That worked for a decade, or sort of 2 decades maybe, until knees and elbows and joints start to creak and groan, and then got to find something else. And then I took up Aikido for about 7 or 8 years, which is a sort of an obscure martial art where you lob people around the place and get lobbed around the place. Again, which is very different to being structured and looking down somebody's mouth. I found it wonderful, and it kind of introduced me to Eastern philosophy and sort of all of Buddhism and that side of the whole Eastern philosophy. I got interested in reading about it first, and then we would have done some practices. And then I got interested in my mind and how messy my mind was, and went off and did a counselling and psychotherapy course and trained to sort of professional diploma level. And I've always been into that side of things, primarily driven by the fact of noticing what a complete fucking mess my mind was when I was growing up. And you think you have it all. We all go around knowing that we're a complete mess and putting on a veneer of, I've got it all together, I'm fine, everything's good, I'm in control. But actually, the trick that I learned, what I took away from my 4 years of studying psychotherapy, is just about getting comfortable with how messy you are, and also getting to know your strengths and weaknesses, and tucking your weaknesses, being kind to yourself. This idea, you brought up self-worth, tucking your weaknesses in under your belt and saying, I'm good enough for the moment, there's something I can work on, and there's always something you can work on to improve things. So not letting yourself succumb to too much negativity is a really important thing in any walk of life. So, and as a result of all of that and that Eastern philosophy, I got into meditating and into yoga with my wife. So we've been yoga practitioners for about 15 years. I've been meditating for about 10 years. And then I trained to give these courses about 5 years ago. So I've been teaching mindfulness, which is a wonderful experience in itself, for the last 5 years or so, running these mindfulness-based stress reduction courses, which are MBSR courses. They're 8-week courses where you do 2.5 hours a week for 8 weeks, and you go home and do 45 minutes of homework, which is a big ask, but it's got hugely popular and taken over. This is what really brought mindfulness as a word into Western society, because it was developed in the basement of some hospital in Massachusetts by John Kabat-Zinn, and it was all about, he said, give me the patients that you can't do anything for upstairs and we'll take them down. And he was a yoga guy. His buddy was a Zen meditator. And they picked out bits from all the Eastern sort of practices and threw it into an 8-week course. And it just gave these people who had no hope upstairs, gave them something. It brought them into themselves, even with their broken bodies, broken minds. It gave them something, gave them hope. It expanded their awareness out of their physical problems into a bigger sort of awareness. And from there, it's just, but it's old stuff. This is all comes from Buddhism, but they've trimmed away all of the packaging and all the beliefs and all the rituals. So that's what is mindfulness? If I was going to define it, I would say it's really waking up to whatever you're doing in any given moment. And by that, I mean really being present to it. And I don't mean awake as opposed to sleeping. I mean awake as opposed to switching off your, what psychologists now call your default mode network, which is your capacity to do things on automatic pilot, which is a wonderful skill we all have. You've learned to walk, you've learned to drive, you've learned how to lift up a cup of tea. Think of watching a baby learning to walk. They're staggering all over the place. You think, Jesus, they're going to kill themselves, they're going to hop themselves off, this, that, and the other. And gradually it becomes automatic. And remember the first driving lesson you took and you're going with your foot on the clutch. So, and all these things become automatic. And the problem is that automatic ability to do things automatically can sort of creep into everything. And this is what makes Monday feel like a Monday. Oh, this Monday feels the same as the last Monday. That's your default mode network. Boredom is default. I'm bored, there's nothing happening. So what? You're alive. So boredom is, you're sort of asleep. You're switched off. You're not. The problem with any automatic pilot is it dumbs down all the information that's coming in. So it uses the bare bones, and also like an aircraft automatic pilot, it assumes that everything is staying the same. We're at 30,000 feet and we're coasting along. Whereas the reality is you've only got a certain number of years on the planet, weeks, months, days, breaths. You have a limited number of breaths to be alive and exist. So even if you wake up to that fact, and I don't mean getting scared about death, but this is part of waking up, is really being with things as they happen. You're carrying all your baggage, which is your growing up, your memories, how you are formed, how you've responded to different situations, how you've been educated, the society, religion. You're carrying all this information with you as you meet each moment and each situation. So that's partly automatic. How you meet somebody new in a situation is in some ways determined automatically by what's happened in the past. Also things you've been traumatized by. They're stuck in there. So you might flare again, you might react in a certain way to something that triggers something that's under the surface that you have no control over. You might suddenly flare at something and it's to do with something that happened a long time ago. So these are ways that we meet our experience. So mindfulness practice is about teaching you to get out of your thinking mind. And a lot of us are stuck in our thinking mind a lot of the time, back into the present moment. And you do that by practices that bring you into your body, by practices that bring you into your sensations, because you don't need to think to feel any of your senses, okay? When you're looking at something, you don't need to try to look, it happens. You're seeing stuff. It's soaking, your senses are just pulling information in from all sources, and you're only using a little bit of it. So while our sight is very important, our sense of touch is very important, our hearing is important with conversation and language, smell not so much. So all the senses are bringing information, but most of us are switched off. Like, for example, as you're listening to me now, where are your feet? Okay, so now you're thinking about your feet. Okay, can you feel your feet? Can you dig your toes into the ground, into your shoes, and just provide a little sensation of pressure in your feet so that you can now be aware of your feet? So in any given moment, in any situation, there's there's a sort of a horizontal axis where you're meeting things and you're thinking, but there's always the capacity to drop into a vertical kind of awareness thing, which is as something is happening, like you're listening to me right now, there's the opportunity for you to drop into your body, to become aware of your breathing, to become aware of your feet on the ground, to become aware of how activated you are, how stressed you are. I'm a little stressed talking, I'm a little excited, so I can feel my heart is beating a little faster. So in any moment, there's a capacity to drop right into your inner experience and enrich. But to do that, you have to switch off your default mode network. You have to wake up. You have to say, okay, how am I feeling? How's my body feeling? How's my back? How's my old aches and pains? They're not doing too bad. And also there's the capacity then to expand your awareness in other ways, like it's not all about me right now. It's about, okay, it's about me, how my body is feeling right now. It's about this group. What does it feel like to be in this group, in this space? This has a particular energy to it. So I can expand my awareness out into the group and see what that feels like. That doesn't even need talking. What's it like just to be sitting here together? And then I can expand it out even further. What's it like for me to be up in Dublin? I've been down in Cork for the last while. Here I am, in this moment, in this theatre, in Dublin, in Ireland, on the globe, in the solar system, blah, blah, blah. So you can expand your awareness up in a sort of a vertical way in any given moment. And mindful practice helps you to do that. And you do it by learning to train your attention. And your attention is your ability to focus on some aspect of your awareness. It's like a kid with those little torches. You can narrow it really down and get a fine concentration on one little aspect of what your whole field of awareness can be. So that's a narrow, concentrated focus. And some types of meditation do that. You just focus on a candle or a mantra, one word, and keep repeating it over and over. And it'll calm you down and it'll relax you. Mindfulness is more about spacious awareness. So with mindfulness, it's kind of a middle path. You focus on, for example, an anchor, which would be your breath. So you feel your breath coming in and out, and you try and hold your attention on your breath and keep it there. But your attention doesn't want to stay there. It wants to float off into all sorts of things. And a lot of the time it goes up into your thinking mind. And part of the mindful practice is noticing that your attention is bobbed up into your head, bringing it back down into your breath. So you catch your attention, bring it gently back down to your breath, and you develop that practice. And the more you practice it, the more you can start to bring your attention under a bit of control, which improves your concentration. It also grounds you, so you're not so stuck up in your head. Particularly if you have, like me, you've got some negative thoughts that go up around your head. Who wants to be up there with all the negative thoughts? Wouldn't it be nice to develop a practice where you can sort of push those negative thoughts? You can't get rid of them, but you can push them into the background. This is why we all do sports and stuff like that. Pushes us into our bodies. So you forget about your thinking for a bit because you're thrown into an acutely stressful situation that gets you out of your head a bit. And you feel better and you wonder why. Why do I feel better kicking a leather football up there and back down here again? What's the point of it all? So you can think about all of these things, but they have an effect. So with mindfulness practice, they've now done studies that a 10-minute practice once a day for 4 weeks shows changes in your brain. You know, where the different parts of your brain will light up. That's all it takes, a 10-minute practice. Develop a 10-minute practice. There's loads of apps like on your phone, Headspace and Insight Timers. You can get an app. There's loads of stuff on YouTube to get interested. Find a course somewhere if you feel like it. But the MBSR is a big ask. Go and do a taster somewhere. So there's lots of ways to get into it. It's not for everybody. It's like, I equate it to, it's like taking up a musical instrument. Some people are musical and they take to the guitar or the piano really well. Some people have to work at it. Mindfulness practice is like that. It's not for everybody, and don't beat yourself up if it's not for you. But if you taste it and you like it, go explore it. It's a wonderful way to deal with stress. So a little bit about stress. A simple model for stress is your body has two ways to exist. You cope with acute stress by ramping up your body, by sending blood to the muscles, fight or flight reaction, sharpening your mind so that you can respond quicker. Your breathing, your heart rate all go up. That's the fight or flight mode. And then the opposite of that is calming down. So it's kind of like after you've had a belly full of food, you're nice and relaxed. The blood flows out of your muscles into your gut to aid digestion, and your body gets ready for sleep. So your body has a sort of a down mode, okay? And the problem is, living in somewhere fast-paced like that, like we are, there's chronic stress. Your body likes a bit of acute stress and it likes to come down. Chronic stress tends to be the problem. And chronic stress can be like things can be being unemployed, not having work. It can also be playing too much Game of Thrones, messing up your routine, so you're losing structure, so it's affecting your sleep, not sleeping properly, boozing a bit too much. All these things can be chronically stressful. So you're feeding back into your own stress levels. So mindfulness practice is a wonderful way to develop a capacity to unravel some of that and to bring yourself down. I just want to introduce you to one little practice today, which I think would be really good for anyone, but really good for, say, if you're just about to walk on stage and you've got the jitters, or you're just going into an audition and you're really nervous. And it's just belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. It would come from yoga, but it's a mindful skill that we teach on one of the courses as well. So I'm going to do that with you, just as a way to give you a little taster of what the type of practices are like, okay? So just unfold your legs and make yourself comfortable. Lean back in the chair, okay? Get yourself nice and comfortable. Close your eyes if you're comfortable to do so. And just notice, take a nice deep breath and just let it go. Okay. And now bring one hand to your heart and one hand to your belly. And just gently make contact with your body. One hand on the heart area, one hand on the belly. Now we all breathe in a certain way. Some of us are more chest breathers, some of us are belly breathers. So notice how your hands are moving as you breathe. Just don't do anything unusual at the moment. Just feel your hands move as you breathe normally. With most of us, and it's not all of you, it's probably just a little bit of chest breathing, and your chest doesn't even need to move that much. So with belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, we want the lower hand to move. So I want you to inhale a little deeper. So you're taking control of your breath, and I want you to, as you breathe in, to push out your belly like a balloon for 1, 2, or 3 seconds, and then let the belly collapse again. And just gently take control of your breathing, but you want a balloon out the belly for 2 or 3 seconds, and then let it dissipate for 2 or 3 seconds. Nice big deep breaths. But all the movement should be happening in the lower hand, pushing out your belly like a balloon. If you find it difficult to do, you can relax and just take a deep normal breath, but otherwise just keep doing this for a couple of moments. Notice the difference between the in-breath and the out-breath. Ballooning out the belly takes a bit of effort, but the exhale is a kind of a letting go. Right now our attention is on our hand and our belly as it expands on the in-breath and falls away on the out-breath. But like any little meditation practice, your attention can wander. You might be thinking or you might be judging. You might be thinking, this is a weird thing to do, so you're up in your head judging it. So come back down to the feeling and the actual bare sensation of your hand on your belly. Focus on the next in-breath. Pushing out your belly and letting it go. And now relax your breathing and just open your eyes wherever you are. You can drop your hands. But as you're here, just look around the room and just keep an awareness of your breath. Just feel your normal breath. And maybe just take the whole space in, a kind of a spacious awareness of the whole group. And there's a reflective aspect of mindfulness practice, which is noticing how you feel in any moment. How has that little experience affected you? Do you notice a difference? And you may not, because it's only a short little practice, a couple of minutes. And I think I'll leave it at that, Dave.
Thanks a lot. That's great. Wonderful. So we've about 15 minutes to go. So Peter, would I just throw it open? Yeah. Thoughts, questions, any reflections anybody might have that you want to air? Please feel free. Any response to anything in particular that the panel had to say? Yes?
Just to say that it's just such a privilege, and thank you so much, all of you, for sharing it. I have enjoyed it thoroughly. It's my first time at theatre since the 11th of March 2020 when I saw the last show in the Abbey. It was an amazing feeling to walk in and to hear each and every one of your stories, and then to end that beautiful sense of mindfulness. It's just such a privilege, such a pleasure. And so interesting, sometimes the best theatre, I was in drama school in London, and I often thought one of the best moments of theatre is sometimes hearing people's story. It's just this experience of sitting around and talking and hearing everybody's story. It's just beautiful, and thank you very much.
Could you just repeat or summarise what's been said? Because unfortunately we don't have, this has been recorded, we don't have mics, because obviously if we didn't have COVID we'd be able to hand a mic. So
Yeah,
just kind of summarise what was said,
Sure.
so that people watching this in later time
Yeah,
understand
okay.
what
So,
the comment was.
So this morning we've been talking to a panel here of actors and actors, writers, theatre makers.
Yeah, I mean what she said, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Oh, I beg your pardon, sorry. So, yes, this lady was just saying how wonderful it is to be back in a theatre space for the first time in 18 months, and what a pleasure that is. Yeah, I think everybody can identify with that. It is quite a wonderful thing to be back. So thank you for that. Thank you for your contribution.
And I'm just going to say that I would have loved to have been an actor, but I didn't have the courage or the guts. And I don't know if people realise how brave you are. I think you're fantastic.
So this lady was just saying how much how brave she thinks actors are, and how much courage it takes to be an actor. And I think that's a lovely thing to say, and I would concur with that. So thank you for your contribution. Thank you.
Now it's like being back in the theatre.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Saver. I just wanted to say a big thank you, because for me this is so I moved to Ireland like a year ago, and I've been trying to get into different circles like this, to learn and it's been hard, and it's really refreshing to hear the stories and to understand that it's almost the same thing for everyone, and it's uniquely, even though it's uniquely different, situations are really different, but the idea, it happens to everyone, and it kind of gives you like the strength to go on, knowing that there are other people that have actually gone through this or even worse. So thank you very much. It was a very enlightening and strengthening experience.
Thank you.
This gentleman here was saying that he's just been here in Ireland for a year, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how much he appreciates, again, that sort of sense of being part of something. And again, I suppose everything that we've been reiterating about community and, drawing strength from other people and, their experience. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Can I just ask, I was here last week as well, and my name is Catherine, and I was here last week, and a question came up about kind of coping strategies, I suppose, kind of how people kind of cope with the kind of ups and downs of it all. And it kind of came up, but I was wondering, is there anything specific that you do when you have one of those down days or one of those periods where you're not getting that much work, where you get that bad news, or you get that kind of, that rejection of a funding application or something?
I think when we were in the Gaiety, we had an actress come and talk to her. I believe it was Lisa Harding, who's also a novelist now, I think. And one of the things that she said at the time, which didn't resonate with me at the time, but has resonated with me a lot since, is that you cannot get all of your joy from your work, because oftentimes you don't have any work. So if you, I suppose she was trying to impress upon us the importance of maintaining your relationships and maintaining your hobbies and maintaining all the other things in your life that give you joy, so that when you do get those rejections or those no's, that it doesn't have to be the end of the world, because you can go for a pint with a pal, or you can hang out with your family, who probably, like me, all have normal jobs, and that you have those escapes, that you maintain those aspects of your life, and that you don't allow, because it's so easy to allow the work to become the be all and end all when you're so passionate about what you do, and that's great to a degree, but that it's really important to not let it be your entire life or your entire happiness.
Thank you. So Claire is just there responding to a contribution regarding this lady here was asking about how you cope with the downtimes and what your coping strategies might be for when you get, refusal of, a grant application, etc., or you haven't got a job, etc. So that was Claire's reply to that query. So thank you very much.
Can I add something into that? In a simple way, get out of your head into your body. So into nature is a great way to do that. Go for a walk in the park, on the pier, do a yoga class, do something that gets you out of your head, because most of the, part of the suffering that you're creating for yourself is your plans, your anticipations, and you're meeting the failure. You've got all these ambitions, and that's all up here. And that's creating chronic stress to sit for the day there, letting that spin around and around and say, why didn't I do this? I need to do more of this, and then. It's just creating stress. Go for a walk, kick a ball around the place. If it would do anything that gets you into your body, and you'll feel better after an hour. But you have to you have to wake up to the fact that that's happening. That's a mindful moment, thinking, oh, I'm spinning around here, just going around in my head. You need to actually wake up to that, and that's where mindful practice is good, at you realizing that you're in that kind of a cycle. And then you've got to get up off the sofa and go and do something about it, which is anything really. Just get out for a walk is simple.
Yeah, I was going to say that's something that I would absolutely hold up as well, is just going for a run and sweating it out, or going for a walk, or a sea swim, or something that is physical and the mind is left behind a little bit. I used to go to the Phoenix Park and actually just seeing the deer sometimes. I'm not massively into animals or anything, but seeing the deer, I'd be like, oh wow, yeah, there's other things going on in the world, rather than you as a human in your little bubble of stress and anxiety about something. There's like other things happening. Looking at the bigger picture. But yeah, activity I think is like huge. Physical
Natural
activity.
beauty is a great way just to kind of shut your mind up. And also a cold plunge, sea swimming, everybody sea swimming. 20 seconds with your face in the water is enough to shut down your thinking mind as well. So you
No more.
And
seriously.
die.
Just stick your head underwater in the 40 foot and you'll be in a different space altogether. Literally.
Yeah, I'll third that in terms of just sometimes you have so much energy as an actor, like mental energy, and ready to go, that if you can get that into your body and hit the pavement. I did an audition a couple of months ago, didn't get the part. Rejection is never easy. But I remember I rang my dad after I got the bad news, and I said, I'm available to foot turf. So I went home for the week, and I foot like turf like no other person on the bog, and it was just, there was that sense of physicality and routine again, and there was such a simple format of like 2 sods this way, 2 sods that way, 2 sods this way, and it's like, there, I've completed a task, and no one can ever say I didn't do that.
Achieved.
Yeah, but also, and you'll never stop learning from rejection, from auditions and all of that, and going into your next audition, what did I learn from the last one? But psychologically, I've tuning my mind towards the notion that no matter what the result may be of the audition, if I feel like I've done my job and presented myself in the way I wanted to present it, after that, it's in their hands, and it's like, well, I gave them what I could. And that really helps me, because if I often go into with the mindset, no one will ever have this interpretation of this part that I have. It's completely unique. So almost like I'm delivering them a product. This is mine and nobody else's. And if you like it, brilliant. And if you don't, I'll take my wares somewhere else. So that helps me personally if I feel like I've represented myself in the way I wanted to. It's in the hands of the gods after that.
Something else, I think, this is something I do in general, not just about acting, but I think with acting, say, there is a lot of shame that comes with rejection, and sometimes you don't actually want to meet your actor friends to talk about it, or your other friends, because it feels like they could judge, even though they're obviously not, but you're feeling self-loathing. So I like writing things down in like a diary or something. And for me, that just gets it out, rather than if you're in that kind of shame bubble, you mightn't want to talk to people, but writing it down can really help, I found.
And one other thing is just to not let it be the only thing that you do in the day.
Yeah.
So if you have an audition or a meeting or whatever it is, don't let it be the only focus of your day. So as soon as it's done, go and do something else that brings you joy, or go and work on something else different. And I also throw my sides in the bin after every audition, because I used to keep them just in case.
And then you get a call back.
And printing is the bane of every actor's life, but still, I walk out of every audition, no matter where I am in the world, and I throw those sides in the bin and hope for the best. That's just part of superstition.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along. It's been a wonderful morning, wonderful discussion, and it's a pleasure to see you all. And please come and see the show if you haven't already seen it. I'm going to see it tomorrow, so it's great to be part of this company, and thrilled to be an actor. And just thanks again to Fionnuala, Jarlath, Clare, and Paddy. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.